You are listening to the Fire Rescue Athlete Podcast with your host, Aaron Zamzow.
Hey everybody, Aaron Zamzow here with the Fire Rescue Athlete Podcast. I want to just thank you real quick for tuning in. So today, what I wanted to talk about was and is the keto diet. And is it something that firefighters, EMTs, and paramedics should look into if you've been contemplating doing or following, I guess they call it a keto lifestyle? I just wanted to give you some pros and cons and a little bit of insight as to my take on it. I've tried it personally, and let me just back up a second for those of you that maybe aren't as familiar with it. So the keto lifestyle or keto diet is something that's a high fat, a lower carbohydrate, moderate to lower level amount of protein. A lot of your energy source comes from fat. Now, the caveat to that is that, the diet wants you to get more of your fats from more healthy fats, not necessarily the bad saturated fats, but more healthy fats like almonds and, guacamole. And then, of course, you couple that with, since you're getting a higher fat intake, you don't do as many carbohydrates. As a matter of fact, you really, really limit the carbohydrates to a point where your body goes into ketosis, where you're utilizing and burning more fat for energy than you are for carbohydrates. That's the real 30-second elevator story on a keto diet. Typically, the diet, again, is pretty strict. About 5 to 10% of your calories come from carbohydrates, 20 to 25 from protein, and then 70 to 80 from fat. So again, what happens is your body breaks down fats into these ketones and then uses that for the energy source. So I've tried this diet just because it's what I do. I try to do these different things and then relay them on to you. And I didn't see that big of a difference, number one. Number two, I found it really difficult to follow, and it just didn't make me feel good. I did feel lethargic at times. And part of the reason is we'll address it here as we start talking a little bit more about it. But before I get into my own personal experience, and I'm going to leave that to the end, I just wanted to give you, why would someone do that, or what's the purpose, or what are the pros of the keto diet? Why can it be good for you? I'm just going to give you some real quick ones here. Originally, the keto diet started with adults and children having seizure disorders, and what they found that following the strict diet, the seizures went down. There are also some other neurological diseases and issues that have been made better with drastic improvements by following this diet plan. Now, a lot of this then has transferred into the mainstream, and they're finding that the keto diet can potentially have other health benefits. One is that it reduces the insulin levels. Obviously, because you're not ingesting as many carbohydrates, your insulin levels in your within your bloodstream, muscles and tissues is a lot more regulated, which then leads to a decrease in inflammation, which is something that we all have, and especially as first responders, we probably have a little bit higher amount of that due to the lack of sleep and stress and some of the dietary restrictions or dietary habits that aren't necessarily the best. So, that's a really good positive thing about this diet, is that it does reduce the insulin levels and inflammation. The second thing is that I'm sure you've seen Instagram posts and Facebook posts, which is why you're probably intrigued about it, but it can lead to weight loss. Now, I'll tell you why at first. You'll hear people say, I started keto. First 2 weeks, I lost like 30 pounds or 20 pounds or something like 15 pounds, which is very reminiscent of the conversations we had when people did Atkins. For those of you that are my age, you'll remember the Atkins craze. So what happens is when your body doesn't eat as many carbohydrates, your body also doesn't require as much water, or doesn't bind to as much water. So you wind up flushing out a lot of your water in your system. And then, of course, you lose this weight. And And that's really one of the initial things that happens. I get, and maybe and possibly gives people, this feeling of accomplishment, and then they stick to it a little bit more. But the carbs and the higher sugar laden foods, they contribute to water retention. And so when you start cutting those foods out of your diet, the water weight goes away. You look a little thinner. You feel a little bit better. But here's a caveat to that. And we'll talk a little bit more about this when we talk about the cons, but I don't know long-term, 2, 3, 4 years, if that weight stays off. And especially as you adjust away from going on the keto diet, what that does. So originally though, people will see some weight loss. You'll also end up eating more healthy fats on this diet. And fat is a real crucial element to health. I don't think, generally we get enough of the healthy fat. I think back in the early 80s and 90s, fat was a really, really negative thing, so we stayed away from it. But, the diet advocates for eating avocados, nuts, wild fatty fish, which are really good for us. Another positive of the diet is that it's a great way to detox from sugar. One of the things that you can't do if you're following keto is have a lot of carbohydrates, including sugars, and that this diet will help you kind of get rid of those sugars and limit them. And then, another positive of it is that if you're following any diet plan, you're actually making a more conscious effort to figure out what you're putting in your system and in your body, which is also a very positive thing. I think half the battle when it comes to nutrition is actually understanding what you are eating. There's a lot of hidden sugars, there's a lot of hidden calories, a lot of hidden fats. So this is a good way to kind of gain a little bit more control over your nutrition. So those are some good facts and some good positives of following this diet. And of course, with all the positives, you want to look at the other side and maybe why or possibly one of the, the cons of this diet. So let's take a look at those. My personal experience found the same thing, is that this diet is extremely difficult to follow, especially for firefighters, EMTs, and medics. If you're eating in firehouses a lot, you may not have a lot of foods that you can choose from. Not saying that there won't be a lot of high fatty foods in the firehouse, but there may not be the healthy fats that you want to intake if you're going keto and following keto. So one of the difficulties is, of course, you really have to stay above or ahead of the curve when you're planning your meals, because you're trying to get an obscene amount of fats and no carbohydrates. And unfortunately, most places you go, if you're eating out or if you're eating at friend's house or if you're eating at firehouse, you really have to plan ahead. So the diet can be difficult to follow. And a part of that also is that when you are eating, now that you're eating more fats, some of these fats aren't necessarily so healthy. So you can get the other side of that, increased cholesterol. You can feel like you're a little bloated at times. And you can actually increase your risk of heart disease if you're not following the diet to a T. And of course, you all know, or you should know, that heart disease is one of the number one killers of firefighters, due to our diet, our stress. Another kind of con of this keto diet is that you really have to stick with the strict fats and the good healthy fats, which, you can only eat so many avocados and almonds in a day. So another one is that you don't get a lot of fiber. You may not get as much fiber or heart healthy fiber, I should say, depending upon which ones you choose. Again, it comes back to, you really have to plan this whole thing out, your whole diet out, and stay ahead of it. And so one of the things that you may not get, because obviously you're restricting carbohydrates, and a lot of carbohydrates have some good fiber sources in there, so you may not get that heart healthy fiber. And then there's also there can be some side effects. If your ketone levels get too high, you can you could go into a ketoacidosis state, which can be life-threatening if you don't start to regulate your insulin. There's also something out there called the keto flu, which is a common side effect. You also get some fatigue. Some people get headaches, especially if you start to limit, your sugars and drastically right away. And then you really have to stay ahead of your hydration, because you don't have as much water binding or carbohydrates that bind to water in your diet, you don't have as much water. So dehydration or a loss of electrolytes can be something. And then you get something called bad breath or keto breath. You can also develop kidney stones, muscle cramping, dizziness. Personally, I experienced a couple of those things just because there's not a lot of carbohydrates in your system. And part of that is the adjustment of going keto. And part of that is, the side effect of this particular diet. And so now one of the things that I really want to address is performance. Now, I have read, and I'm sure people that have followed keto are going to combat this particular thing, next topic or next con. But I just want you to hear me out on this. There is a lack of evidence of performance improvements on the keto diet at very high intensities. Now, let me say that again, at very high intensities. There is research that has been done about performance improvements in lower intensity exercises, and that this diet can actually combat fatigue, in that it can improve performance of say like marathon runners or distance runners. Now that is true from some research that I found. You also have to look at how big of a sample did they use. But here's the thing: as a firefighter, you're not running a marathon. You're not going low and slow, as I like to say. When we are on the fire and rescue scene, it is go. It is high heart rate, high effort level, high anaerobic in some cases. And I cannot find substantial research that backs the fact that keto can improve that. And when you couple that with, at these high anaerobic intensities or these high exercise intensities, your body needs fuel now. And because of the process of breaking down fats, that fuel is not readily available right away. Carbohydrates are fast burners, and they're used for energy sources when you need them. So it is just something that you really want to take into consideration, that there is not research done, especially on firefighting and the keto diet. But from a physiological standpoint, if you don't have a lot of carbohydrates in your tank to burn when you really need them, this may not be the best choice for us. And I hope I'm explaining that correctly. And I'll give you an example. You are in ketosis. You get a call where you have a structure fire. You need to hump hose line up to the second floor. That is highly anaerobic. It's high intensity. And the energy sources that normally fuel that are carbohydrates. Now, you can actually train your body to burn fats, but not at that high intensity and not at quickly, and from a physiological standpoint. Now, I'm sure some people will refute that and combat my statement there, which I hope they do. I'd love to learn more about it. But from my standpoint, there just isn't enough evidence and research on performance improvement and keto diet at very, very high intensities like firefighting. So I'll leave you with that last con. Again, this diet has some pros. I've tried it, not for me. Felt lethargic, and of course, waning over my head, I had this idea: God, am I going to be able to? I don't have a lot of energy stores there readily available if I need it at high intensity. So, but I'd like you to comment, read. I actually included a link into the blog introduction and overview section. So please go to firerescuefitness.com, take a look at the keto diet and my blog post on it. Some people have followed it, and I know they saw some great success at first. But again, let me know your experiences on it, your thoughts on whether you agree or even disagree with me. I with open arms welcome those as well. But I also, lastly, just want to say thank you. You are taking your health into your hands, and that's what we need in the fire service. More people like yourself that are interested. Please share FRF, the Fire Rescue Athlete Podcast. Again, the next couple of weeks, I'll be posting some more workouts, some more resources, and we'll be doing some more blog posts. Let me know how I can help you get fit for duty. This is Aaron Zamzo signing out till next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to the Fire Rescue Athlete Podcast. Please check back soon for more Q&A with your host, Aaron Zamzow.